The detective casually flips open a cookbook, but a recipe for calf pancreas suddenly hits him hard, because the cannibal they've been hunting has a taste for human organs. Will suddenly senses something's off. But the moment he turns around, he's met with a cold blade. He tries to draw his gun, but Hannibal pins him down instantly. Will can't believe it. The mentor who guided him so carefully is the very cannibal everyone fears. What's worse, he's about to become the next meal. Thinking he's already won, Hannibal starts talking, trying to get Will to stop resisting. But Will won't give up. He quietly grabs a bolt from the floor and drives it straight into Hannibal's abdomen. Instead of getting angry, Hannibal seems strangely excited by the injury. Seeing that unhinged look, Will quickly pulls his backup gun from his leg. He keeps firing until the gun runs dry, then finally collapses, unconscious. Hannibal, riddled with bullets, slumps over his desk and blacks out as well. Overnight, Hannibal goes from a respected psychiatrist to a reviled monster. Surprisingly, both men survive the brutal encounter. After recovering, Hannibal is locked in a high-security cell, while a traumatized Will retreats into seclusion. It seemed like their paths would never cross again. But years later, a serial killer known as the Tooth Fairy forces Will to seek Hannibal out again. The Tooth Fairy brutally wipes out two seemingly perfect families. His methods are horrifying. He strikes only on nights with a full moon. After killing them, he places shards of glass in their eyes and lines the bodies up like some twisted ritual. Days of investigation lead nowhere. No sign of the killer. Under pressure from above, FBI agent Jack has no choice but to bring Will back in. With his unique empathy and profiling ability, he might crack the case. But after nearly dying because of Hannibal years ago, Will hesitates. Still, knowing the killer could strike again, Will agrees. After saying goodbye to his wife, Will sets off with just a small bag. He arrives at the victim's home and begins reconstructing the crime scene. Studying the blood in the bedroom, Will deduces the killer shot the wife first. But instead of killing her, he forces her to watch the others die. He drags the bodies into the master bedroom and places glass in their eyes. Only then does he assault the woman, something that deeply confuses Will. But when he notices a doll on the table, it suddenly clicks. He did it so the family would witness her humiliation. There's talcum powder on the bodies, but none like it in the house. Will figures the killer used it to remove his rubber gloves more easily. The powder got on the victims because he took the gloves off and touched them. The best place for prints would be the cornea, or under the eyelids. Will tells Jack to have the bodies re-examined immediately. Sure enough, they find part of a thumbprint under a victim's eyelid. At the same time, bite marks help reconstruct the killer's teeth, crooked and highly distinctive. Will adds that the wife is the real target. The rest are killed to fulfill his fantasy. This isn't a mindless killer. Everything is carefully planned. What's unclear is how he chooses his victims. The two families lived far apart and didn't know each other. Will knows if they don't find him soon, there'll be more victims. To understand the killer better, Will turns to Hannibal. He doesn't want to, but he has no better option. So Will heads to the Baltimore State Hospital. Before going in, he's visibly tense. The psychological scars run deeper than the physical ones. Hannibal still resents Will for putting him away, so he refuses to help. But Will offers a deal. Help them and he gets access to files again. For someone locked away, that's a huge temptation. Will adds that the case is complex, a challenge for both of them. That competitive spark gets him. Hannibal agrees. Looking at the case photos, Hannibal quickly forms a precise conclusion. He believes the killer is deeply insecure, likely with a facial deformity. The broken mirror wasn't rage. It was him confronting his own reflection. He then suggests Will focus on the victim's yards. These murders feel like a ritual, a pilgrimage, and the full moon matters. Following that lead, Will finds home videos in a closet. The warm footage makes him smile. It reminds him of his own family. Then he heads to the second crime scene. Near a large tree, he finds a hidden soda can tab in the bushes. Then Will climbed up into a tree. He realizes you can see everything from here, and there's a red marking carved into the tree. The killer likely waited up there until nightfall. Not knowing what the mark means, Will goes back to Hannibal. Hannibal tells him it's a Chinese character. It means red dragon.
Will still has another question.
At one scene, the killer could have entered through the door, so why the balcony? Breaking in that way woke the husband, forcing the killer to shoot him. It doesn't match someone so calculated and ruthless. Hannibal explains it was his first kill. Fear takes experience to overcome, and he was still learning. Like a pilgrim, he's transforming, becoming the red dragon. Hannibal asks to see the home videos, but Will refuses. Then he suddenly changes the subject and asks Will for his home phone number. The way he insists on getting Will's home info makes it clear he's planning something. Since Hannibal provided useful leads, the police grant him a special 10-minute call with his lawyer. He then pretends to be from a newspaper, calls Will's assistant, and successfully gets his address. At the same time, he also contacts a Chicago paper. The reason Hannibal does all this is to use the Tooth Fairy to get revenge on Will. He's been holding a grudge the whole time. Sure enough, A prison janitor later discovers that Hannibal hid a letter from the Tooth Fairy inside a roll of toilet paper. In the letter, the Tooth Fairy expresses admiration for Hannibal and even shows a strong interest in Will. The FBI is lucky to find the letter, but a key sentence has already been torn out. At this point, Hannibal has already been in solitary for half an hour any longer, and he's bound to get suspicious. To avoid raising suspicion, the prison stages a fake blackout and sends an electrician past Hannibal, buying the FBI time to analyze and replace the note. After scanning and analyzing the paper, they realize Hannibal is communicating through newspaper personals. They quickly track down the message Hannibal posted. Shockingly, the message contains Will's home address and instructions telling the Tooth Fairy to kill his family. At that moment, Will's wife is asleep when she suddenly hears a noise outside. The door opens, but thankfully it's just their son. Right then, police arrive and safely escort Will's family out. After confirming his family is safe, Will heads to a bookstore to look up the poem Hannibal mentioned. He discovers it comes from William Blake's works, filled with illustrations. One image, the great red dragon, catches his eye, a woman kneeling beneath the dragon. Only then does Will realize why the Tooth Fairy worships the red dragon. That same day, the FBI detains a reporter named Freddy, who became famous for covering Hannibal's arrest. Freddy forged credentials and snuck into the FBI building, trying to get autopsy photos. Worse, he secretly took photos of Will in the hospital, putting his family at risk, earning Will's disgust. But Will comes up with a plan. Have Freddy write a humiliating article to provoke the Tooth Fairy. To avoid charges, Freddy has no choice but to cooperate. What he doesn't realize is that this decision will cost him his life. Sure enough, the very next day after the article is published, Freddy is abducted. Those insulting words clearly enrage the Tooth Fairy. But instead of killing him right away, he forces Freddy to watch recordings of his victims dying. As Freddy trembles in fear, the Tooth Fairy makes him look at the red dragon tattoo on his back. The next morning, he ties Freddy to a wheelchair and burns him alive. He even arrogantly sends the recording of the murder to the police. Watching the footage, the entire team is chilled to the bone. Meanwhile, fresh off the kill, the Tooth Fairy is out on a date with his blind coworker, completely unaffected. Over time, her kindness and warmth begin to pull him in, but painful childhood memories keep tormenting him. His grandmother's voice still echoes in his head. These conflicting emotions tear him apart, shaking his beliefs. Eventually, he snaps, using the excuse of buying art to enter a museum. After knocking out a staff member, he tears up the great red dragon and stuffs it into his mouth, as if swallowing it will complete his transformation. At the same time, Will keeps reviewing home videos from the victims, and finally notices something. The killer seems familiar with the house layouts, meaning he must have watched these tapes before. That suggests the killer works at a video processing company, giving him access to the tapes. Will and Jack rush to the video company. Based on Will's description, the manager says only one person fits, Francis from the service department. It's clear now, Francis is the Tooth Fairy. Once identified, Jack calls in backup to arrest him. But when Will arrives, the house is already engulfed in flames. A blind woman stumbles out, shaken but alive. She tells Will that Francis has killed himself. Police later find a thick journal in his safe. From it, Will confirms Francis is the killer, and learns more about him. A full psychological profile of the Tooth Fairy finally takes shape. Abused by his grandmother as a child, Francis grows up deeply insecure, socially twisted, even developing a split personality. He sees himself as the Red Dragon. Each kill elevates him, so when Freddy degrades him, he abducts him and proudly shows off his tattoo. Francis idolizes Hannibal, even mimicking him by biting Freddy before killing him. Yet with his blind co-worker, he appears gentle and kind, but when the dragon urges him to harm her, he's torn apart inside. He even considers suicide to end the struggle. In the end, he comes up with a plan. He tries to consume the dragon to break free, but clearly it doesn't work. That night, when he sees Will at work, he knows time is up. He abducts his girlfriend, drenches the house in gasoline, planning to die with her. But he can't bring himself to hurt her. A gunshot rings out. Blood splashes her face. Feeling a body on the ground, she realizes Francis is dead. Just when everyone thinks it's over, Jack gets bad news from forensics. The body in the house isn't Francis. It's his co-worker. Turns out, when he went to abduct her, he saw her with another man. Driven by jealousy, he killed the man. Knowing police were closing in, he used the body to fake his death and buy time. Meanwhile, unaware of the truth, Will is sitting by the ocean with his wife. Then he realizes his son hasn't come back. Something feels wrong. Back home, he senses something off, grabs two knives, hiding one behind his back. He carefully moves upstairs, checking every room. Opening his son's room, he sees Francis holding him hostage with broken glass. At Francis's command, Will drops the knife. Seeing his son terrified, Will comes up with a plan. He mimics Francis's grandmother, verbally abusing him. As Will keeps going, Francis becomes agitated, fear creeping into his eyes. Finally, Francis snaps and charges at Will. But Will is ready. He pulls a hidden blade and stabs Francis in the thigh. As Francis recoils, Will ran back to the master bedroom with his son and retrieves a hidden gun. But suddenly, Francis stops attacking. Worse, his wife is calling from outside.
Well? Molly, get down!
Shoot him. Shoot him.
After a burst of gunfire, the nightmare finally ends. Not long after, Hannibal writes Will a letter, saying he misses him. After reading it, Will tosses it into the ocean, as if letting go of his past. And that's where the film ends. Red Dragon is more than just a serial killer hunt. It's about choice. What's truly chilling isn't the monster. It's how human nature teeters on the edge of darkness. The Tooth Fairy wasn't born evil. He was shaped and consumed by trauma and isolation. Will chooses to face the darkness, understanding monsters without becoming one. Some are broken into monsters, while others choose to be the light in that same abyss. And that's the most powerful and precious part of being human. That's it for today. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.